Bob Oוכsler, a robotics engineer and former mission specialist of the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland, is also convinced of the Rodopher film's authenticity. He believes the flight pattern indicates an energy field which enables the disk to maneuver independently of terrestrial gravitation.
The individual images as they came up clearly showed something that you could not see with the naked eye in looking at the film or even looking at the individual prints under close scrutiny, and that there was a haze, if you will, a very tight haze, almost like a fuzzy outline around the craft itself on the image. Now, this, of course, compared to the trees that are visible in the film, which were crystal clear and very well in focus. In other words, you have a very sharp contrast. You immediately might be concerned about the possibility of capabilities of double exposure, which is, of course, very difficult to do with film. However, in this particular case, we found it very, very intriguing that the craft itself had very, very sharp contrasting edges along where the porthole areas are and around the top of the cab. But especially in the bottom portion of the craft, we began to see that there was light emitting from the craft, but this was not a light such as a glow, like a reflection you'd get if somebody was projecting a light onto an object. This was rather interesting because it tended to suggest that there was some form of energy associated with the vehicle itself that was actually causing this sort of a red glow in the undercarriage area. But that, along with the glow that we were getting, the sort of a haze, a very, very distinct fine haze around and very, very close to the craft itself through the images, suggested that there was an actual radiation effect. Almost, I guess you could liken it to a mirage effect. People are fairly familiar with when you ride down the highway during the summer and you look across and you can see the heat rising, and it tends to distort images that were behind the mirage. Well, this is very similar to the effect that we saw on this object, suggesting several things. One, that you were actually looking at a three-dimensional object as something that was superimposed onto the film. That again suggested credibility with regard to the film, and secondly, it suggested that there was technology associated with it. This was not just a trash can lid or something that was just casually thrown up in the air while filming was going on. So began to become much more encouraged with what I was seeing. The more I began to look into the individual segments, the film itself, the motion, we began to see things that you might liken to a distortion. In other words, the craft itself physically changed shape. Now, not the whole craft, but it seemed that portions of the craft changed shape. Now, this was a product either of what you might call an optical illusion as a result of the technology associated with the craft, the method that it used to maintain its levitated state to violate gravity, or it was a mechanical apparatus associated with the craft itself. We noticed that the ball structure in the bottom of the craft, in concert with the receding of these individual structures, that the one portion of the craft had an indentation that would go in every time this one ball would go up, and then it would come back out into a round disc, or circular area. So I think that these features all collectively, more than anything else, and even more than the testimony of Madeline Rodopher herself and the historical testimony of George Adamsky prior to his death regarding this particular event, all tend to suggest that we are probably dealing with an authentic case. And I think it's time that perhaps some researchers of historical value would probably want to go back and take a much closer look at the George Adamsky case in its entirety.